Joining us now to talk about this and much more, accounting professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey and author of the book Positive Financial Karma, Daniel Geltrude. Daniel, thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, Professor, tell us, what kind of impact will this actually have on American workers?
Well, what it comes down to is there's three elements here. There's the human element, political element, and the economic element. If we focus in on the economic element, we have to look at all these migrants coming into the United States. Generally speaking, they have a tendency to take some jobs away from Americans. On top of that, they'll also work more cheaply and perhaps under the table, so to speak. And that's where you have them also not paying taxes. So we have resources that potentially go into helping these people. And then we have to look at what comes back. Potential loss of American jobs and lack of collection of taxes.
And Professor, do you think that we're in a different time than normal in regards to jobs, being that there has been this pandemic, being that people are out of work, there's more unemployment? Do you think that's more a concern right now than it ever has been before?
It's an absolute concern. Look, there's a lot of Americans that are hurting out there. We are just coming out of a pandemic. I think the future looks positive. Now, jobs will open up. People will be competing for jobs. The last thing that we want to have happen is that Americans become at the back of the line for the potential employment opportunities. And that's something we really need to think about. Look, immigration is important and we need to have it. But there needs to be a process, and it also can't be at the cost of our citizens and our American workers.
Let's talk about who's at the border right now. The New York Times reporting the number of migrant children in custody along the border has tripled in just the past 2 weeks. So why do you think it is that this is not being called a crisis by everyone on both sides?
I think this is a political issue here. I hate to go into this realm, but we have to call it for what it is. Look, if these people were not viewed as a future Democrat voters, I think the reaction from Congress and the White House would be much different. But the thought process here is that when we get these people into the country and eventually they're here to stay and then get the right to vote, that they're going to be voting in one direction. So it's a long-term play by one of the political parties.
All right, let's circle back to jobs for a second. You say the federal government is competing with small businesses, the unemployment benefit bonus, in effect, paying people to stay home. It's something we've seen for the past year now instead of going out into the workforce. So like you mentioned, people coming into the country willing to work for less money, also not necessarily getting unemployment from anywhere from the government. So how is this going to play out in the long term?
The federal government is not playing this correctly. Look, there are people that need help, and I don't want to ignore that fact. However, when you look at they're going to extend unemployment through September 6th, they're going to make unemployment not taxable for up to $10,200. And then we have a third stimulus check going out for $1,400. When you combine that of all free money going out, you have to look at it and say, well, there's a disincentive for people to go back to work. If you can get paid the same amount, or when you factor in taxes, perhaps a little bit more to stay home, you have the federal government competing with small businesses for workers. So as the economy gets up and running again, hopefully before the end of the summer, it puts the federal government in competition with small businesses for employees. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, you know, we're in a much different position than we were a year ago. A year ago, we saw people almost anticipating that break from the grind that people were so used to. Also, fear of getting COVID and didn't want to go back into the workforce. Now it's been a year. People seem to be itching to get back into an office. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Thank you so much for your insight, Professor Daniel Geltrude.
Thank you.